Hello and welcome to Sedematica. In this video, we will be looking at how to jumpstart with scientific computing using C. Now, this video or this series of videos won't teach you to become a scientific computing expert. Neither is it geared towards making you become a pro in programming in C, the C programming language. But then this is just to get you started quickly or help you with some quick fix, help you start certain applications easily with C. So, and then if I mean application, I mean scientific applications like writing a C file to compute certain scientific tasks and then also output certain things in computation. So without wasting much time, let's get started. For the first video, or for this video in particular, we'll be introducing the structure of the C file and then look at certain variables, how to declare them, how to assign them, as well as print and then scan or receive inputs from users. So without wasting much time, let's get started. So the first thing we have to do is go to our terminal and then create our C file with the file extension .c. So I'll call this file lesson1 and then lesson1.c. So, but then which text editor would I be using? I'll be using Vim. You could also use your Nano or use any text editor of your that you prefer. So Vim and then lesson1.c. Once I type this command in my terminal, I hit enter and then my terminal opens for me. By my Vim editor opens. The next thing we'd have to do is enter the insert mode by pressing I or typing I on our keyboard. And then you see here that we have the insert mode here. So the VI text editor is ready to receive commands or receive text inputs. So looking at the structure of any C file, the first thing you have to do, the first thing that it checks is the include. So first you have to type the include, and then we need a standard input and output library. So we do the standard input output library, but then it's a header file, so .h. And then from there, we now declare where our main program will go to. So we declare the int main function or method, however you want to put it. And then we are ready. So every C file that you create should have the first line it must include a standard input output header library. So what this does is it takes care of printing outputs to the screen or terminal and then receiving inputs and also does certain basic stuff for us. And then the int main function is basically where we dump the code. So this is where the code or the program you are writing, this is where it's going to stay or going to be. All right. Now, if you wouldn't like your main function to return anything, then you can put void inside the brackets, but the parentheses, but then it's not a necessity. And then most people also return 0 or put return 1 or return 0 here, probably after or at the end of their codes. This is just to say that, okay, after running the code successfully, print the integer 0 for me. Since this function is an integer function, the int you are seeing there is standing for integers. Okay, so that's just a quick intro to the structure of a C file. Now, up next, we go to variables. Now, variables are very important in our lives as scientists or mathematicians in such a way that they tend to hold important stuff or help us to easily change our program as and when the need be. So in order to declare variables, we have to tell C that this variable I'm creating or this variable name I'm creating should receive, probably will be receiving or will be storing integer values or float values, or maybe characters or strings. So in order to do that, you have to first tell C that the variable you want to create is an integer. So by saying int, and then you bring your variable name. So variable name 1. Bear in mind, variable names should not start with a number. They must not contain spaces. So if you want to maybe put a space, then you use the underscore variable name 1, and then make sure you terminate the line by adding a semicolon at the end of the variable. So our variable name 1 receives what? An integer. And then to comment in C, we use the double forward slash. So this variable receives what? An integer input or integer data. Okay, so now for the next one, we could assign a float. You could either use the float or the double variable data type, and then call this probably var name 2, and then terminate that line or enter the line, and then this particular variable will receive float numbers. Now floats are basically numbers that have decimal. So decimal numbers are the floats we are talking about. The integers are just the positive and negative whole numbers. So bear in mind, if you are building a program that will be taking or that will be making use of integer values, there's no need using floats, since this will create more space in memory for that variable. But then if you are using or building a program that will receive float values or floating point values, then there's no need to use the integer values, since these will only chop and take the whole number part of it. Now the next one we'll look at as a doubles also do the same thing as the float. So doubles and floats are practically the same, but then it has to do with your preferences. And then the next one is the character, so the char or char. And then this one, the difference between the char and then the other string variable is that this char variable receives only one character as an input. So if you're assigning it, it just receives an alphabet as an input. If you want to give it a word or a sentence or a phrase, if you want to give it a word, a sentence, or a phrase, then you would have to add something special to it. So first, let me add my comments. I said this is for single character inputs. And then this is for doubles or floating points. So floating points, data type or data. And then we said that if you want a variable that would store words or sentences or anything, then that variable should have something special at the end. So var name maybe 5, and then this time around we wouldn't terminate it early, but then add a square bracket in front of it. So if you put a square bracket, it's saying that this is more or less like an array, right? But then this time we didn't put any number inside, which means that it's open. So depending on the storage, what you are storing into it, then that will determine the content of that array or the number of elements this variable array will take. But then this array is receiving characters, so which means that even when you type numbers, the numbers will be regarded as strings or characters. So basically these are the data types that we know, and then how to declare variables. So any variables you'll be using would obviously fall within this category. Now, if we've declared the variables, we want to assign the variables and probably use them in creating a simple app or something. So let's say I want to assign variable name 1 to it. I could just do var name, right, 1, and then put an equal to sign. But then this time around, this equal to doesn't mean the equal to we do in mathematics, but then this is just an assignment operator. So we are assigning this variable name, we are assigning this number, probably 12, to the variable 1. So basically that's what it means. And then we want to assign var name 2 to 3.5. Bear in mind that our var name 2 is a float, so it receives a float, and then var name 3 is what? Probably 4.5. Now bear in mind, after every assignment you would have to terminate it using a semicolon. So you have to tell C that what I am writing, or the line that I am typing, I'm done with the line by ending it with a semicolon. And then the var name 4, we say that receives what? A character. So probably S or P. And then we have var name 5. var name 5 receives what? Strings of characters. So set them. Okay. Set them. Pay attention to the quotation. So this one uses the double quotation. So set them. I guess this one is S. Okay, now so we are done with the assignment. So we have assigned it. Now at this point we want to compile and see whether our code will run will compile successfully without returning errors. So we press escape and then the colon and press W to save our work. And then we move to the next terminal and then try to compile it using GCC command. GCC, we call it lesson 1. So lesson 1.c, we want the output to be saved as lesson 1.x. So we realize that we had an error after compiling. Now looking at this error is saying that array size missing in var name 5, and then there's a warning: assignment to char from the char star or the char pointer makes integer from pointer without casting, and then the other ones. So now let's see how we can fix this error. Now when we go back to our text editor, we realize that we are getting this error because we are assigning the character string or the arrays or the strings like we assign the others. Now since the strings or the variable for strings are programmed in a different way in C, we can't assign them this way. But instead, if you want to assign them differently from when you declared them, then you would have to use a loop and then point at each space or at each space created in the memory. So that's the address. So point at each address and put your character inside, which we'll be looking at in some videos to come. But for now, to correct this error, we would have to just delete this and then go back to our where we declared them and then assign them there. So now if you want to assign the array, you would have to put them, or the string, you have to put them in curly braces and then you use the quotation, so set them. Now when we save this, shift colon, and then once we save this and recompile, let's see, it compiled successfully and then we didn't get any error. So it means that assigning of what arrays or strings must be done after declaring, else you would have to loop through it individually and then assign it to the address for each element, which we'll be looking at in a subsequent video to come. Now we know that we've learned how to declare variables and then assign them. The next thing we would have to do is how to print these variables. So in order to print these variables, all we have to do is call the printf function, right? And then this printf function is included in the standard input and output library. So there is included in this header file here. So that's good. Now the printf function, and then we do what? We say that so once we want to print whatever I want to print, we put in a curly braces, the quotation mark. So the output or var1 var name1 holds. Now since var name1 is holding an integer, we use the percentage d for that, percentage d, and then comma, and then we put the var name1 there. Please pay attention to the capitalization. So if you use uppercase, make sure you do that, else you run into an error. And then we also do the same thing for var name2. So we say printf the var name2 holds what? So this is holding a float, so we use percentage %f for that, holds float, and then comma, and then we do the var name2, the name2. So this, I want to print the two, var name2 and 3, so we do var name3 as well, var name3, and then go back here and put another percentage, and percentage %f for var name3. So that's for that. But then here we want it to be printed on a separate line, so we would have to include a new line here, so \n here, so we don't risk running everything on the same line. Then this one to \n here, or let's put this one to here, \n. Anyways, so now we can now save and try running our code and see what happens. So w, and then come here, compile our file, and no errors. So it means that everything is correct. To run it, we do $lesson1.x. Once you hit enter, you realize that the var name1 holds 12, var name2 holds var name2, actually I made a mistake, holds 3.5000, and then var and 4.5 for var name3. So we see that these inputs or these variables have been printed successfully on the screen for us. Now, in order to print the character, we would have to loop through each element to print it. So after treating loops, then we'll look at how to print or output these characters, the character on the screen for us. So that's just by the way. And then the next thing we would have to look at is how to take in variables or new assignments or new values from the user. So in order to do that, all we have to do is use the scanf, right? So the scanf, so first we have to print an input, a command, say please enter probably your age, right? Your age, and then so \n. Now we now use the scanf. So the scanf is also included in the standard input output library. So we use the scanf function to receive the input, but then now what are you taking? Bear in mind, we've not declared any age variable, right? So if you like, we can declare the age variable and then do that. Now, interesting thing to note is that it is a rule of thumb to put all your variables that you've declared at one space or one place so that the program wouldn't, or your code will look very nice. So I will put, and then I want the age to be an integer, so int age, maybe age 1, right? And then out and then close it, and then come back here, and then now that we have declared the age variable. Now the thing is that we are receiving input from the user, but then where do we want to keep it? So the input we are receiving is an integer, so we use %d. So if it were a float, we would use %f, and now we'll be using %d, and then comma. Now we would have to locate or show or put this into an address. So we'd have to get the address of the age 1. Now using the address of operator is just the ampersand, so use the ampersand and then age 1. So the ampersand takes the input you have and then looks for the address of the age 1 variable and then dumps the integer there. So from there we want to print back we want to print the output. So you have to say your age, or you are %d, since the age is an integer years old, right? So, and then new line here, but then we are using the age variable, so we include the age 1 variable here and then terminate the line. We save and then run this to see how this code will perform. Now when we compile, we don't get any errors, which means everything is working perfectly, and then we run. So now it's now saying please enter your age, so 45, and then hit enter. It says you are 45 years old. Interesting. So now we've been able to declare variables, assign these variables, and then print this or print the input or the values of these variables on the screen, as well as take inputs from users and then print them to the screen as well. But very interesting. So in the next video we would put this to work and then use this to build a small project, mathematics project, something like some interesting, simple but then intuitive project, and see how well we can utilize or make good use of the things we've just learned right now. Thank you very much, and then please like and subscribe for more content like this, and we wish to see you in the next video. Thank you.